They thought it would be hilarious, setting the janitor up on a fake blind date with the CEO as a cruel joke. But when she actually showed up, what she said next left the entire office frozen in silence. Laughter echoed through the sleek glass walls of the 43rd floor. The sunset poured golden light onto the polished marble floors, but inside the marketing bullpen, the mood was anything but warm. A group of junior executives huddled around a screen, snickering as they finalized their prank of the month. It had started as a joke during coffee break, harmless banter, they thought, but now it had evolved into something cruel. Okay, so Ray's going to think he's going on this dream date with the CEO, one of them said, hardly containing his laughter. This is gold. Raymond Moore, or just Ray, the quiet janitor, had worked at the building for years. He was the type people walked past without a glance, always early, always quiet, always cleaning. He gave respectful nods, offered help when someone dropped a coffee, and kept to himself. The idea that someone like him might sit across from Alina Hart, the poised and powerful CEO of Hart and Vale Enterprises, was ridiculous to them. So ridiculous they found it funny. The plan was simple. One of them would tell Ray that the CEO noticed him, that she admired real, hardworking men and was tired of shallow guys in tailored suits. They'd say she asked for a blind date with someone authentic and that she chose Ray. And what better place than the rooftop restaurant downtown where all the executives mingled after hours? They rehearsed it like a script, perfecting the delivery. Nobody expected Ray to believe it, but he did. Ray's eyes had widened at the suggestion, his hand tightening slightly around his mop handle. "The CEO?" he asked, unsure, blinking. He wasn't smiling, not quite, but you could see the hope slipping in like sunlight through a cracked door. "Yup, this Friday," the prankster grinned. "She said to dress nice, 7 o'clock at the Glass Garden." Ray had stood there for a moment, confused, maybe even in disbelief. They could have stopped it then. They could have said it was a joke, that they were messing around, that he shouldn't take it seriously. But they didn't. Instead, that Friday evening, Ray pulled out his only dress shirt, one he hadn't worn since his wife's funeral, and ironed it on his tiny kitchen counter. He polished the scuffed shoes he'd kept in the closet and carefully wrapped a small bouquet of grocery store carnations. His hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from nerves. The restaurant was a world above his comfort zone. People draped in designer suits, laughter clinking with champagne glasses, and a pianist softly playing classics in the background. Ray stood at the entrance, looking out of place, older, dressed modestly, but with a heart full of hesitant hope. Somewhere across the restaurant, the pranksters watched from their table, already giggling. One whispered, "I can't believe he actually came." Then the doors opened again. High heels clicked on the stone floor. Conversations hushed. People turned. And in walked Alina Hart, the CEO herself. Ray didn't see her at first. He was too focused on smoothing his shirt one last time, making sure the flowers weren't too wilted. He kept checking his watch, nervous that maybe he'd come too early or that she'd changed her mind. A tiny voice inside told him it was all a mistake, that someone like her wouldn't show up for someone like him. But another voice, quieter but stronger, told him to wait. He heard the shift in the room before he saw her, the soft hush, the subtle intake of breath. Then he turned, and there she was, Alina Hart, tall, elegant, striking in her simplicity. She wore a deep navy dress, nothing flashy, but everything about her commanded attention. When her eyes found his, she smiled, not politely, not awkwardly, a real smile. Ray's throat dried. He almost stepped back. She walked straight to the table where he stood, still holding the flowers. "Mr. Moore," she asked gently. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then finally, "Yes, that's me." "I hope I'm not late," she said, pulling out a chair. "It's been a long week." Ray looked around, unsure. The smirking execs were leaning forward in their chairs across the room, stunned. Their joke had taken a wild turn. One of them mouthed, "What is happening?" He slowly took his seat, setting the flowers on the table. "These are for you," he said, embarrassed. "They're not much." Her expression softened as she accepted them. "They're beautiful, thank you." There was an awkward silence. Ray shifted, unsure what to say. His hands fidgeted with his napkin. He assumed she'd quickly realize this wasn't what she expected. She'd excuse herself with grace and say it was a misunderstanding. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned forward with curious eyes and said, "I don't usually do this kind of thing, blind dates." She smiled again. "But I figured for once I should trust my team's judgment." Ray blinked. She didn't know. Somehow, she actually thought this was real. Or worse, maybe she did know and was playing into it, which made everything more confusing. He cleared his throat. "Just so you know, I didn't expect this." "Neither did I," she said softly, "but here we are." Their menu sat closed on the table as conversations slowly returned around them. Elena asked questions, where he was from, where he grew up, how long he'd worked in the building. Ray's answers were simple, honest. He worked nights to help take care of his granddaughter. He'd been with the company for 11 years. Before that, construction. Before that, a mechanic. She listened, genuinely. Her eyes didn't wander. She didn't tap her phone. When he mentioned losing his wife 5 years ago, her smile faltered a bit. She said she was sorry and meant it. The laughter from the corner table grew quieter. The prank was unraveling. Something real was beginning to form, and no one knew quite what to do with it. Ray tried to ignore the stares. He could still feel the eyes of the young executives burning into his back, like they couldn't believe what they were witnessing, and truthfully, neither could he. Somewhere in the middle of the conversation, his nerves began to settle just a little. Elena's presence had that effect. She didn't just look like someone important. She felt like someone who carried weight, but never used it to press others down. She smiled at his stories, not out of politeness, but as though she found genuine joy in hearing about the small lessons he picked up fixing cars or the way his granddaughter lit up when listening to old soul records. He talked more than he thought he would. Normally, he didn't say much, content to let others pass him by unnoticed. But Elena wasn't like those others. Every time he paused, unsure he should keep going, she encouraged him not with words, but with the kind of silence that invites deeper things. At one point, when he was describing how he wakes up at 4:30 every morning to arrive early for shift, Elena interrupted gently. "You know, Ray, most people who wear ties in this building wouldn't last a week doing your job." He chuckled softly, assuming it was a compliment. "Well, someone's gotta keep the floors shining." Her face grew thoughtful. "No," she said after a moment. "Someone has to care enough to do it right. There's a difference." She took a sip of her drink and leaned back. And in that brief silence that followed, something shifted not just between them, but in the room. The group of pranksters had stopped laughing. One of them had left the table completely. The others exchanged awkward looks, unsure if they should stay or make a quiet exit. Their joke had backfired spectacularly, but more than that, they were being confronted with something much harder to swallow: the undeniable dignity of the man they'd tried to humiliate. Ray noticed them, finally, watching from a distance, leaning forward like vultures expecting him to embarrass himself. He swallowed hard, then turned back to Elena. "I think this whole thing might have been a misunderstanding," he began, his voice quiet. "I don't know if you were told the wrong thing or—" "I wasn't told much at all," she said, placing her glass down with quiet conviction. "But I've learned over the years, life has a funny way of putting the right people in our path when we least expect it." He didn't know how to respond to that. "You ever wonder why people ignore janitors, Ray?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was calm, but something in it shimmered with emotion. "Sometimes," he admitted. "People fear reminders of humility," she said. And yet, they never realize that's where real strength lives. The table fell silent again, not awkward, but filled with understanding. The kind that sits between two people who, despite the difference in shoes and salary, recognize something important in each other. Their plates arrived, but neither of them made a move to eat. The conversation had taken on a quiet gravity, deeper than either expected, and it didn't feel right to interrupt it with silverware and small talk. Candles flickered between them. Outside the tall windows, city lights blinked like distant stars, the sounds of clinking glasses and quiet violin music floating around them. It felt surreal to Ray, like he had stumbled into someone else's life. But then again, so did most of his days ever since his wife passed. Elena noticed the way his hand hovered near his glass, hesitating. She leaned in, her voice warm. "Do you know what I remember most about my father?" she said thoughtfully. "His hands always smelled like engine oil, and he called me Scout, like I was out ahead of the world." Ray smiled, caught off guard. Was he a mechanic? "He was a janitor," she said, with a small, proud nod. "Worked at a public high school for 27 years. Came home every night with his clothes soaked through, but he never complained. Not once." Ray's smile disappeared. He sat a little straighter, as if the honor she gave to her father extended to him now, like a shared memory. "I used to help him on Saturdays," she continued. "We'd clean locker rooms, mop long hallways, pick up after kids who'd never think to say thank you. And I remember asking him once why he did a job no one seemed to notice. You know what he told me?" Ray shook his head slowly. "He said, because there's no such thing as unimportant work. There's just work people think they're too good to do." Those words hit Ray somewhere he hadn't been touched in years. Not just because they reminded him of his own beliefs, but because for the first time in a long time, someone else had said them aloud, someone at the top. "My wife used to say something similar," Ray said softly, eyes lowering. "She said we're remembered by how we make people feel, not what we do or what we own." Elena gave a small laugh, then caught herself. Sounds like they both had it figured out. Behind them, one of the junior executives stood and left abruptly. Another looked visibly uncomfortable, then chased after him. The joke had turned into a mirror, and now they didn't like what they saw. Elena noticed, but didn't acknowledge them directly. Instead, she looked at Ray with the gentlest expression he'd ever seen on anyone's face. "Ray, I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but I'm glad I'm sitting here. I haven't had a real conversation like this in years." He glanced at her, surprised. "You?" She nodded. "It's lonely up here sometimes. People talk to you for what they want or to say what they think you want to hear. But you just talk to me like I'm another person." "Isn't that what we all are?" he said. Her eyes lingered on him for a long moment. "Yes, Ray," she whispered, "exactly that." The air outside was cooler than expected as they stepped out of the restaurant. The city hummed softly in the background, headlights gliding past in streams of white and red. Elena wrapped her coat a little tighter around her shoulders, but her expression remained calm, her heels clicking softly against the pavement as they walked side by side down the sidewalk. No awkwardness, no rush to hail a car. Just a slow, thoughtful pace that felt far more intimate than anything that could have happened inside that fancy rooftop. Ray walked with his hands in his pockets, glancing down occasionally as if to make sure the moment was real. He'd expected embarrassment tonight. Maybe laughter, maybe pity. He never imagined he'd be strolling through downtown beside the CEO of the company he'd been cleaning for over a decade, talking like old friends. He certainly hadn't expected her to share memories of her father or her own childhood layered with struggle and pride. "Can I tell you something?" she asked gently. "Of course." "He never lived to see me make it here," Elena said. Her voice didn't waver, but he could hear the ache underneath. "I think about that more than I say." Ray looked over at her. She was staring straight ahead now, eyes slightly glassy. He passed before I got the executive offer. Stage 4 lung cancer. We didn't even know it had gotten that bad. He kept working until the final month. Her voice dipped, soft and strong. That man taught me that no one gets anywhere alone. No matter how high you go, you're standing on someone's shoulders. Ray nodded slowly. Sounds like he was a good man. He was, she said. And tonight, when I sat down with you, it felt like I was sitting with a piece of him again. His steps slowed for just a moment. She noticed. You reminded me of him, Ray. The quiet pride. The way you don't ask for recognition, but you carry more weight than anyone realizes. The world needs people like you more than it needs another 100 executives in tailored suits. Ray stared ahead, speechless. The weight of her words pressed into his heart. He had long stopped expecting to be seen, truly seen, by anyone in that building. He was the man they asked to fix the air conditioning, but never invited to lunch. He was the one who read memos about respect, but heard laughter behind his back. And yet here he was, walking beneath skyscrapers with the only person who mattered, hearing words he'd never forget. You know, it's funny, she said, glancing over at him. Someone told me this was supposed to be a joke. Ray turned sharply, his breath catching. So, you knew. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. I figured it out. He felt shame rising in his chest, but before he could respond, she gently touched his arm. Don't you see, Ray? You weren't the punchline, they were. They walked in silence after that, but it was a rich, full silence. For the first time in years, Ray felt like he belonged. The next morning, the same group that had laughed behind closed doors now sat in uncomfortable silence in the executive lounge. The energy had shifted overnight. No one was joking this time. No snickers, no sideways glances, just tension hanging in the air like fog. The few that remained of the original prank group sipped coffee without tasting it, checking their emails more out of habit than focus. They had heard whispers, but none of them could believe Alina had actually gone through with the dinner. And now, none of them knew where they stood. At exactly 8:06 a.m., the glass doors opened. Alina Hart walked in, heels sharp against the floor, mood unreadable. She didn't acknowledge the room for several seconds. She placed her leather folio down on the conference table, opened it calmly, and then looked up at them with cool, focused eyes. Let's talk about last night, she said simply. A muffled cough, 2 chairs shifted. No one volunteered a word. I want you all to look me in the eye, she said, voice clear but not raised. Do you think what you did to Ray was funny? The silence was painful now. One finally spoke up, stammering. It wasn't meant to. Save it, Alina interrupted. She wasn't angry in the way people yell or pound on tables. She was beyond that. Her stillness was what made her terrifying in that moment. You took a man who comes here every day and keeps our building running, who never asks for praise, and you made him the target of a humiliation campaign. You thought because of his job title, his clothes, his quiet nature, that he didn't matter. She walked closer. Let me be absolutely clear. Ray is worth more to this company than any of you have demonstrated this year. And frankly, I'm ashamed it took a prank to show me the character divide we have within this office. One of the younger execs tried to murmur an apology, but Alina held up a hand. This isn't the moment where you say sorry because you got caught. This is where I say what's going to happen. She opened her notebook. Ethan, you're demoted, effective immediately. You'll be shadowing facilities for the next 2 months. Ethan's face went red. You're going to learn how things run when no one's watching. She continued without pause. Lara, you're suspended for 2 weeks without pay. Reflect, volunteer, do something that doesn't benefit you. She looked at the third and final person, Marcus, who hadn't spoken once. Her voice was cold. You're done here. HR has your papers. You can collect your things before noon. The room sat in shocked silence. Alina exhaled, collecting herself. This company will not reward cruelty, and it will not mock decency. If anyone has a problem with that, the door is wide open. She turned and walked out without waiting for a response. But before she returned to her office, she made one last stop. Down in the lobby, in the quiet back hallway where Ray always started his mornings, Elena found him mopping a long stretch of tile. He turned when he heard her steps, eyes surprised. She smiled and simply said, "Can we talk?" He nodded slowly, still unsure where this unexpected road was leading. "Come with me," she said. "There's one more thing I want to make right." Ray followed Elena down the hallway, his mop leaning against the wall behind him, forgotten. His heart pounded with uncertainty. No one of her status had ever asked him to walk with them, let alone spoken to him like he mattered. His mind raced. Was this about last night? Was there fallout? Was he in trouble somehow? Still, he trusted something in her tone, steady, kind, and deliberate. She wasn't done surprising him. They stepped into the HR office, where a woman behind the desk stood as soon as she saw Elena enter. No time was wasted. Elena turned to Ray, her voice calm but firm, the kind of tone that always introduced something life-changing. "Ray," she began, "you've been with this company for how long?" 11 years, he said quietly, hands still folded in front of him. "And how many days have you called in sick?" He paused, thinking, maybe 2 or 3. One when my wife passed, and once when I had a fever. The HR woman nodded silently, already aware of his spotless record. Elena glanced at her, then back at Ray. "We've overlooked you, but I haven't, not anymore." Ray looked confused. "I don't understand." "You've kept this building standing," she said. "You've shown more character in one evening than some people show in their whole careers. It's never been about your title. It's about how you show up." She reached into her bag and pulled out a formal-looking document. "This," she said, handing it to him, "is a promotion offer. We're moving you to facilities manager. Full benefits, increased salary, leadership responsibility. You'll oversee the entire custodial team, schedule maintenance crews, everything." Ray froze, eyes locked on the page. His fingers trembled slightly as he held it, reading the words but not fully processing them. A lifetime of humility made it hard for him to imagine himself in those shoes. "I don't think I'm qualified," he whispered. "I do," Elena answered softly. "And more importantly, you *are. His throat tightened. "I didn't ask for any of this." "You didn't have to, you earned it." Her voice softened. "And your granddaughter, didn't you say she wants to go to college?" He looked up, shocked. "We've added an education stipend as part of your new position," she said. "It's enough to help with tuition. She deserves a shot at something better. So do you." Ray choked up, blinking quickly to stop the tears from forming. His shoulders shook once, ever so slightly. For a moment, the room faded, and it was just him and the offer, a symbol of dignity finally recognized. "Thank you," he managed, voice thick. "No," Elena replied, reaching out to shake his hand. "Thank you *." Their hands met in a quiet, firm handshake. Outside the office window, the same workers who passed Ray daily without a glance would soon see him walk through those halls a different man, but not because of a new title or clothes. Because someone finally saw the worth he carried all along. News of Ray's promotion spread through the building like wildfire, though not through an official memo or morning announcement. It moved in whispers, glances, hallway conversations. At first, some people didn't believe it. The janitor, facilities manager, but by the end of the week, it wasn't just a rumor, it was reality. And it wasn't long before his presence began to feel different. Where once he existed just outside the lines of everyone's awareness, now people held elevator doors for him, greeted him by name, stepped aside when he walked past. He didn't walk differently, didn't speak louder, didn't dress like someone who had something to prove. But there was something new in his shoulders, something steady. He held his clipboard with quiet authority, spoke respectfully to his team, and listened with the kind of patience that said, "I've walked in your shoes." One afternoon, Ray found a new member of the custodial team struggling with the industrial floor polisher. The young man looked frustrated, almost ready to kick the machine. Ray stepped in, his presence calm and reassuring, and asked, "May I?" He showed him how to balance the handle, how to guide it rather than fight it. The machine obeyed, humming smoothly across the floor. The younger man watched in quiet awe. "How do you make it look so easy?" Ray smiled and handed back the handle. "You stop trying to control everything. You let it move with you." More and more moments like that began to ripple outward. Ray wasn't just a manager, he became a mentor. He noticed things others didn't. When one of the overnight cleaners showed up with tired eyes, he quietly asked if everything was all right and arranged for her to take a half-day off after learning her mother was sick. When a contractor yelled at one of the maintenance workers, Ray stepped in, not with anger, but with a firmness that reminded everyone he now had a voice, and he wasn't afraid to use it with strength and grace. Even the executive team began to take notice. Elena was seen smiling more often in meetings, nodding toward Ray when referencing team efficiency or morale. 1 week after his promotion, she initiated a new internal policy she called the Dignity Initiative. It required upper management to shadow frontline staff for 1 full day each quarter, not as punishment, but as perspective. Some grumbled, but most changed after just a few hours of walking those long, quiet halls with a mop or toolbox in hand. To some, it was just a program. To others, a wake-up call. But for Elena, it was personal. She stood at a podium in the company's town hall meeting, reflecting on the changes. One man reminded us that respect isn't something you earn after a title. It's something you command by how you treat others long before you're ever given authority. Leadership isn't standing above, it's standing beside. The crowd clapped. Off to the side, Ray remained where he always was, close to the edge, never craving the spotlight. But this time, people turned toward him and smiled. And for the first time in years, he smiled back without lowering his head. 1 month later, just as the city skyline began to fade into the warm tones of twilight, Ray stepped into the rooftop restaurant once again. He wore the same dress shirt from that night, freshly washed, slightly faded, but there was something different in his step. He wasn't looking down, unsure of whether he belonged. This time, he walked in like a man who had come not to impress, but simply to be present. Elena was already seated at the table near the glass edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city. Her posture was relaxed, her expression thoughtful. When she saw him, she stood and smiled, not the polite smile of a CEO, but something softer, something real. Ray returned the smile with one of his own, still modest, but fuller than before. "I wasn't sure you'd say yes again," she said as he pulled out his chair. Ray chuckled. "You're lucky you caught me. Big managers don't just drop everything for dinner anymore." She laughed, shaking her head. "So it's like that now." He grinned. "I'm still me, just with more paperwork." They ordered simple meals, no wine this time, just coffee and dessert. It wasn't a date, not really. More like 2 people reconnecting over what had shifted in their worlds. They talked about how the building had changed, how the energy felt different. Ray told her about new hires in the custodial department looking at him like he was some kind of legend. She told him about an email from a regional VP who had been moved to tears reading about the Dignity Initiative. Then, between bites of pecan pie, Elena raised her glass of coffee and leaned slightly forward. "To the unexpected," she said. Ray raised his as well, to wrong turns that end up just right. They clinked, the sound soft and friendly. Wind moved gently across the rooftop, rustling tablecloths just enough to make Ray glance toward the railing. Down below, lights blinked on in offices and street corners. The city was alive, but up here it was peaceful. "I think my father would have liked you," she said after a pause. Ray looked at her thoughtfully. "I think I would have liked him too." Elena smiled. "You might have met him eventually. He always said you meet the best people when your hands are a little dirty." Ray looked down at his hands, still rough from years of work, and nodded. Maybe that's where the honesty lives. They sat for a while in quiet conversation, watching the last light dip behind the buildings. No need to impress. No more pretending. Just a man who had been underestimated and a woman who chose to see more deeply than anyone expected. As the sky turned dark blue, Elena stood and straightened her coat. She reached out and shook Ray's hand, not as a boss, not as a friend performing kindness, but as one equal to another. And in that moment, he understood something. This wasn't about a prank anymore. This was about respect earned, dignity restored, and how sometimes the most powerful moments come not from power at all, but from grace. The next morning, the building came alive as it always did, elevators dinging, phones ringing, footsteps clicking across polished floors. But something about the atmosphere felt softer now, more aware. People didn't just rush past each other like before. They nodded. They held eye contact for a beat longer. The building wasn't quieter, it was kinder. Ray arrived before sunrise, as he always did. He brewed the first pot of coffee for the maintenance staff, checked the overnight shift reports, and made his rounds with the quiet precision of a man who still believed in every detail. Even with his new role, he hadn't changed his rhythm. That's what he believed leadership was, showing up the same when no one was clapping. On the notice board in the break room, a photo had been pinned. Someone must have taken it during the promotion announcement. It showed Ray shaking Elena's hand, both smiling. Next to it was a quote, written neatly in marker. "Dignity is the only uniform that never fades." Employees passed it each morning on their way to punch in. Some smiled subtly when they saw it. One of the newer custodians even reached out and adjusted it when it started to tilt, like it mattered. Later that afternoon, a young intern from accounting nervously approached Ray, holding a clipboard so tight her knuckles turned white. "Mr. Moore?" she asked, anxious. "The Keating conference room, the AC's acting up again. I didn't know who to tell." Ray smiled gently, stood, and nodded. "Come on," he said, grabbing his toolkit. "Let's go take a look." She blinked. "You still do that, fix stuff." "Of course," he said, holding the elevator door open. "It's who I am." That evening, as the sun lowered behind the glass high-rises, Elena stood at her office window, watching the reflection of the city ripple across the glass. Her assistant entered with a file, then paused. "Ma'am," he said hesitantly, "there's a thank you letter from Ray, nothing formal, just heartfelt." She took the envelope and opened it after the assistant left. The note was handwritten, short, and real. "Thank you for seeing a man that everyone else looked through. I don't take this lightly. I'll earn it every day, not with words, with work. Ray." Elena closed the note slowly and placed it on her desk, pressing it flat with her palm. Then she looked back out the window and smiled. Sometimes it takes a cruel joke to reveal a true character. Sometimes it takes a blind date to open someone's eyes. But most of all, it takes one person willing to look past appearances and titles to find the beating heart of someone who never stopped showing up. Ray wasn't just the janitor anymore. He was the soul of the building. And if there's one truth that echoed through every floor, it was this. You measure a person not by what's written on their badge, but by what they carry when no one thanks them. Because real worth doesn't need a spotlight, it shines on its own. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet heroes around you, the ones who show up without asking for credit, who lead with grace instead of ego. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that dignity and kindness still matter. And if you believe that real strength comes from humility, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories that reveal the power of unseen people. because sometimes the ones we overlook carry the greatest light. Let's keep telling stories that make the world a little more human.